So picture this. You've had a long day, you finally lay your head on the pillow, turn off the bedside lamp, and you're just waiting for sleep to kick in. But instead of peaceful quiet, you're greeted by this high-pitched ringing. Or maybe it's a steady buzz or a persistent hiss. During the day, you probably barely even notice it. But the exact moment the bedroom gets perfectly quiet, that phantom sound suddenly feels absolutely impossible to ignore. It is incredibly frustrating. And listen, if this happens to you, I want to start right off the bat by saying you are absolutely not alone. Literally millions of people deal with this every single night.
But why on earth does it seem to get so much worse at night? Like, is your ear actually ringing louder, or is something else going on under the hood? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're launching a full-on investigation into the real, medically backed reasons why tinnitus spikes at night. We're going to look at the anatomy, the environment, and the brain itself to understand exactly why silence sounds so incredibly loud.
Part 1. The mystery of nighttime ringing. What exactly are we hearing in the first place?
So let's get the absolute basics out of the way. Tinnitus is basically your brain perceiving sound when there isn't actually anything making noise out in the real world. It's happening entirely within your own auditory system. But here's the most important takeaway, and this comes straight from standard audiology references like Katz's Handbook of Clinical Audiology. Tinnitus itself is not a disease. Let me say that one more time. It is not a disease. It's a symptom. It's basically your body's red flag waving to let us know, hey, there are some changes happening somewhere in your auditory system.
And because it's a symptom, it's kind of like a fingerprint. It shows up differently for everybody. You might hear a high-pitched ring while someone else gets a low roar, a buzz, a whistle, or even a weird clicking sound. And the underlying factors, just as all over the map. It could be triggered by something super simple like an earwax blockage. Or it could be tied to noise exposure, ear infections, stress, certain meds, or just completely normal age-related auditory changes. But regardless of the cause, the big mystery remains. Why does this symptom just scream at us the exact second we try to go to sleep?
Moving on to Part 2. Suspect 1. The quiet room. Or, where did all that background noise go?
This perfectly illustrates the massive shift your ears go through every single day. Think about it. During the day, your brain is working overtime processing this massive wall of sound. Traffic out the window, conversations, the TV playing in the background, the hum of your fridge, your phone buzzing. All of these everyday noises act like a heavy blanket. They actually partially mask the tinnitus. But at night, you strip that blanket completely away. You're lying in a silent bedroom and suddenly, boom, zero competing external sounds. Without that daytime noise to keep your auditory system busy, the tinnitus feels heavily amplified.
In the audiology world, they actually call this a reduction in auditory masking. But honestly, it really is just this straightforward. Silence makes tinnitus easier to hear. When you completely remove the competition, your brain takes the literally only sound signal it has left, that internal ringing, and just pushes it right to the front of the stage.
All right, Part 3. Suspect 2. The anxious brain. Let's talk about the role of attention and stress.
During the day, you're busy, right? You're distracted by work and just living life. But at night, with zero distractions, this pretty vicious cycle kicks off. Let's walk through how fast this spirals. Step 1. You hear the ringing. Step 2, because there's literally nothing else to listen to, you start focusing on it. Step 3, that intense focus triggers emotional stress. You start getting anxious about why it's so loud and if you're ever going to get to sleep. And step 4, that stress physically alters your brain's awareness, making the tinnitus feel painfully louder. This neurological loop right here, this is exactly why tinnitus is so deeply tied to insomnia and severe sleep issues.
Which brings us to Part 4. Suspect 3. Hearing loss. Specifically, the brain's attempt to compensate.
Now, this is really fascinating. A lot of folks with tinnitus actually have some degree of mild, maybe completely undetected hearing loss. According to audiological theory, when your ear is damaged, it sends a much weaker sound signal to the brain. Your brain realizes, hey, I'm not getting enough input here, so what does it do? It tries to compensate by artificially increasing its own internal neural activity. Researchers literally compare this to turning up the volume dial on a super weak radio signal. You're cranking it up trying to hear the music, but really all you're doing is amplifying the static.
So, how does this tie in to our nighttime mystery? Well, during the day, that static, that increased neural activity, is totally drowned out by the noise of the world. But at night, in the dark, with no external sounds coming in to mask it, that amplified internal neural activity becomes blatantly obvious. It's wild to think about, but the brain's own attempt to fix a hearing deficit ends up creating the very phantom noise that's keeping you awake.
Okay, let's get practical in Part 5, managing your nighttime tinnitus.
time to take back control of your sleep.
Now, what's incredibly cool here is how these management strategies perfectly counter the exact 3 suspects we just tracked down. Suspect 1 was the quiet room, right? So our strategy is sound therapy. The action? Introduce some low-level background noise, white noise, soft rain sounds, a fan, or just really calm instrumental music. You're intentionally reducing the silence to partially mask the ringing. Suspect 2 was the anxious brain, so our strategy is to reduce stress. The action, deep breathing, meditation, regular exercise, and solid sleep habits to physically break that anxiety cycle. And suspect 3 was hearing loss. The strategy there is a thorough hearing evaluation. The action? Go get specialized tests like pure tone audiometry, tympanometry, or an OAE. This helps pinpoint exactly where the auditory system is struggling.
So as you're winding down tonight, keep these absolutely crucial steps in your back pocket. First, remember that total silence is actually your enemy here. Having a soft ambient sound in your bedroom is honestly one of the easiest, most effective ways to sleep better. But importantly, persistent tinnitus is not something to just ignore forever. If your ringing is continuous, if it feels like it's getting worse, or if it ever shows up with dizziness or a weird feeling of fullness in your ear, you absolutely need to consult an audiologist or an ENT specialist for proper checkup.
Understanding the mechanics behind your nighttime tinnitus is literally step 1 toward finding some real relief. You now know it's not magic, it's a combination of missing background noise, heightened attention, and a brain working overtime to compensate for auditory changes. So, I'll leave you with this thought as you head toward bedtime. Will you let silence control your sleep tonight, or will you take control of the sound? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and here's to a much quieter, way more restful night.